Welcome to Caregiver Cast with Mary Elaine Petrucci. Are you overwhelmed raising a family, working full-time, caring for a parent or grandparent? It can be challenging when you're doing it alone. Caregiver Cast helps busy, burned-out professionals reduce their stress and overwhelm to create a better caregiving experience for themselves and their loved one. Caregiver Cast brings caregivers together with experts who provide information in a variety of areas. In each episode, you'll get tips on topics such as finance, legal, medical, self-care, community resources, mindset, and more. We're here to make your caregiving journey a more rewarding one. Acquire the confidence and skills to be a more capable caregiver by implementing the resources and strategies from these expert thought leaders. Get a community of support, resources, and strategies for your caregiving journey inside the Caregiver Lifeline community. Visit caregiverlifelinecommunity.com. And now here's your host, Mary Elaine Petrucci.
Hi, I'm Mary Elaine Petrucci. I'm host of Caregiver Cast. My special guest today is Ken Ceder, who will be talking to us about the science of light and why it's so important for our health. Before I formally introduce Ken, I will give you some background information about him. Ken is the executive director of Science of Light, and he began this full spectrum light following a pioneer, Ott, who developed the Ott light systems and accumulated with his own nonprofit, Science of Light. And it's been on a mission since 2012 to raise awareness of malillumination and the essential need for a balanced spectral diet to enhance immunity and reduce the risk of disease. Ken and his brother Len founded Science of Light with a mission to raise global awareness of malillumination, inspired by new LED technology and the extraordinary health benefits associated with invisible near-infrared light. Their mandate for the last few years has been to develop a simple, leading-edge solution for people when sunlight is not available or for those who cannot get outdoors. So Ken and his brother Len worked with engineers to develop a lamp to supply nutritional light with the characteristics needed to stimulate the sun in a manner like that of the natural spectral diet that's essential for optimum metabolism. Welcome, Ken, to Caregiver Cast.
Thank you, Mary Elaine. Nice to be here.
Most definitely. Okay, Ken, big question for you. How did you become involved in the field of full spectrum light therapy? And what inspired you and your brother to start the Science of Light and develop the nutritional light technology?
Well, we started, interestingly, as caregivers of sorts. This is where this began. I have been working for a very successful toy manufacturer many years back. And one of my tasks ended up being a very unique job of caregiving. He had a brother who had been institutionalized, Mary Elaine, for 50 years in a very dark, well, I don't want to say dungeon, you'll forgive me, but not a very inviting environment for 50 years. All said, because of this chap's success, he was always haunted by the fact that he had an older brother who was institutionalized, and he had a lot of money, needless to say, and what I thought was a pretty darn good life. But he felt haunted that his brother, as I say, was institutionalized. One day he got that bug and said, Ken, I would like to get my brother out. Do you think that you could help me and possibly share some care? Make a long story short, my dear brother Len and I ultimately flew to New York at the time, got his brother out of this institution, if you would, and we brought him back to Santa Barbara, California, where we had been living and working at the time. His brother put him initially into a home with, I think, about a half a dozen other adults. Unfortunately, over time, it didn't work out very well. So my friend, whose name was Harry, by the way, said, Ken, I got a problem. What do you think we can do with Joey, his brother? I said, Harry, I'll bring Joey to my house. I had a new family. I'll bring Joey to my house and I'll bring him in like a brother and we'll see what we can do. Lo and behold, that was the beginning of, I think it was years, Mary Elaine, where Joey lived with us, made miraculous changes, believe it or not, even though he was institutionalized and away from society for 50 years, by simply loving him, treating him very normal, if you would, and taking him and doing things that I was doing on my own, just like I would with a family member. Anyways, ultimately, Joey did pass away, rest his soul. And at the end of that period, Harry, his brother, was so happy and so pleased that we actually helped Joey come back a little bit toward life, if you would, life as we knew it versus that institution. And he said, Ken, I've got many projects on my desk. If you would find one that you like, I love what you did for my brother. I will be your partner and back you in business. Well, that was very exciting to me. So I went into his office, and I was a lazy reader, I must admit. I saw a video tape, or whatever we call it in those days, and I put it into the machine, and lo and behold, I was watching video of this fellow whose name was Dr. John Ott. Many may not know the name, but they would probably know his work. He did a lot of the work for Walt Disney, time-lapse photography, the growing of the pumpkin for Cinderella. He was very famous in his world of photography, specifically or particularly time-lapse. Anyways, what I saw was just absolutely mind-blowing. It was amazing to see things, as I'm sure you can relate. Time-lapse is the speeding up of sequences. Well, I saw things that just grabbed my imagination, went back to my friend Harry and said, who is this guy? And he said, oh, you like John Ott's work? He said, I'm funding some of John's research. In those days, it was for color television, which had a lot of radiation that the world didn't know about. But that's a whole different story. Anyways, he was very happy to make a connection and sent me down to go visit Dr. Ott in Florida at the time. Ultimately, it ended up being a license agreement to make what you've already mentioned, the Ott light, which was technically the first of sorts full spectrum light. And full spectrum light was a term coined by Dr. Ott, and it generically became known as healthy lighting. That said, we started off with Ott light, and that was the beginning of my, do I dare say, passion, truly, then, 35 years ago, to this very day, is how we became involved with light. About 10 years in, we sold off the company and sort of went into retirement, if it's fair to call it that, at that time. However, newer technology that I think you may have also mentioned, called LED, light emitting diode. It's the new energy efficient lighting that most people are becoming familiar with. Because of that new technology, as well as some new science associated with light, my brother and I decided that we would start a nonprofit to stay active and raise awareness of what we had actually been doing, was letting people know that sunlight is really good for you. It's not as bad as the chemical companies and the pharmaceutical companies seem to want to make it this bad guy. The truth is, we need sunlight. The voltage of our brain and nervous system runs on sunlight. All said, time went on, and the new technology, we decided to try to make a product because we were self-funding our nonprofit. And we started that around, I think it's about 10 or 11 years ago, 2012. And we were self-funding, and it was expensive, not to mention that I got grandkids and they're expensive. So we were trying to come up with a way as to how we might be able to support our mission. And we recognized that we had made lights before for Dr. Ott, and the new technology, we started to get into it, if you would. We found engineers that were capable of understanding what we wanted to do. And ultimately, we made some very, very special lights that were not in the marketplace. And because they weren't in the marketplace, the federal government allowed our nonprofit to be rated as what they called a hybrid nonprofit. Meant that we actually make a product and sell that product to support our nonprofit. So that's pretty much the story of where and how, as far as full spectrum light, and the passion remains today, 35 years later.
That's incredible, to find someone like Dr. Ott, who was so brilliant in what he was able to do. And then for you and your brother to continue his work. That's amazing.
Well, and you made a comment. He really was brilliant. I must tell you, Mary Elaine, Dr. Ott technically was actually was a banker. That was his business. His hobby was photography, and basically his hobby was horticulture. And he put those together. I don't know if we have the time, but the story of how he came into it, it's almost the most amazing. It's probably worth telling if you want me to go in. Discovered the importance of light and basically brought it to the world. He really is famous in his world.
Awesome. Yes, I would like to possibly continue that discussion a little later. Can you explain the difference between nutritional light tech and the standard or common full spectrum lights? And then why is the difference? Why is your nutritional light tech better than LED?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank you. First of all, full spectrum light, as I mentioned, is a generic term coined by Dr. Ott to suggest the full spectrum of sunlight, basically simulated sunlight, which has gone on these 30 or 40 years to be associated with healthier light, environmental light when one is indoors. When I started with Dr. Ott, he was very much all about sunshine, obviously, full spectrum light, and he was a proponent for the invisible side of the spectrum called ultraviolet. As you probably know, many people have great concern about ultraviolet, and it's well-founded. However, the amount that comes to us naturally when we don't overdose on it is absolutely essential to our well-being, which is a surprise to most people. Ultraviolet is actually good for you in proper moderate doses. So Dr. Ott was all about the visible spectrum that was basically referred to as white light, or as he coined it, full spectrum light, and was a proponent for ultraviolet as well. When we started, we were making these special lights for Dr. Ott that were also radiation shielded and a few other bells and whistles, which again, I don't think we need to get into that detail at this time. However, what Dr. Ott was not doing that we discovered years later, which is sort of what inspired myself and my brother, because of new research over the last 10 years about what we call near infrared light, or NIR. The research coming out, currently there's well over 4,000 peer-reviewed papers associated with near infrared and health. So Dr. Ott was definitely a pioneer, and full spectrum light in its day was by far better than, do I dare say, limited spectrum light. However, it was not as good as it could be. And because of that, based on the new research that we read of others, that inspired both myself and my brother yet again to make what we called the next generation, if you would, of full spectrum light. We wanted to separate it from the old generation, so we termed the phrase nutritional light technology. And the very simple, or the primary difference is our light, nutrition light, includes both ends of the invisible, a trace amount of ultraviolet, a minute amount, just enough to be biologically beneficial, and yet not enough to have any concern for anybody, even folks that have eye issues, just no problem. Additionally, on the opposite side, the red side, we have brought in the near infrared light. So our light is what we refer to as a truly balanced light source, very similar to sunlight as far as the quality, or what we call the wavelengths, the colors. Where today, the generic term full spectrum light, although the term was a valid term in its day, it's technically not really truly full spectrum. Actually, even though the term is well known, it's really quite limited because it does not include, in most cases, any of the UV, even a trace amount as we do, and certainly none of the near infrared. So unfortunately, most of the manufacturers that are out there are resellers that are selling so-called full spectrum light, or light that they also generically refer to as bright light. Bright light and or full spectrum light is very common. You may have heard the term, Mary Elaine, seasonal affective disorder. It's a form of depression. I'm sure you're familiar, and probably most of your listeners may have heard of it. The point is, these SAD lights and full spectrum lights, technically speaking, they do not include the absolutely essential wavelengths of the invisible near infrared light. Why that is so important is that any light source, when I speak of light, I'm speaking about indoor, indoor artificial light or environmental lighting. Any indoor light,
Mhm.
basically that you see as a white light that does not include the near infrared, and I don't believe that any besides us do that. Unfortunately, they're like Trojan horses. You may see better, you might even feel better, but over long-term use of the so-called full spectrum versus our nutritional, over the unequivocally cause, or rephrase that, contribute to eye issues, specifically macular degeneration. So the point is, as much as you can see better by full spectrum light or improved visual acuity, and if you're using a satellite, full spectrum or otherwise, it may elevate your mood. But unfortunately, the science has proven is that if you don't have the near, slowly but surely that unbalanced light causes very serious biological problems. So that is what separates us from them. Thus, the nutritional light versus so-called full spectrum is dramatically different. Our light not only does not hurt your eyes, it actually regenerates the cells in your eye. So the fact is, our
Wow.
light, you will see better, you will feel better, and in about 86% of those folks, unfortunately, that suffer with depression, both clinical or seasonal, get benefit from using quality light to reduce that depression. It's really quite staggering.
That's really amazing. I'm sitting here attempting to figure out how you can add like all those lights together, light frequencies together. Yeah, I'm playing with that in my head right now. Because I know that there's different wavelengths and different, like you said, infrared, ultra, full spectrum, all of that. And I think it's amazing that you and your brother were able to combine
Well,
three different kinds of wavelengths together
well,
to
the
create
good
a
news is,
product.
yeah, the irony is that we're really not the smart guy engineer. What we were smart enough was to find good engineers, explain what we had in mind. And fortunately, lighting engineers, they get a pretty good idea of what sunlight looks like. And as I mentioned, LED technology, by the way, light emitting diode allows you to sort of dial in, Mary Elaine, meaning
Mm,
that you can really get into specific wavelengths much more effectively and efficiently than the older technology of fluorescence, which were the last phase of so-called energy efficient lighting. I may also just make a comment. Conventional fluorescent lighting, all of it, unfortunately, it gives off radiation that, again, the manufacturers don't seem to disclose. And I would encourage anybody that's using fluorescent to try to get away from it if they possibly can. Again, long-term use has some very negative side effects that are basically cancerous. We've got the research for any of your
wow.
associates and viewers that would like to see at our website. But the point is, the old technology, although it was energy efficient, it was not healthy at all. And the new LEDs, although they're much more energy efficient, if they don't have the near infrared, they are also unfortunately very unhealthy. And the research is at our website as well regarding all LEDs. None of them are healthy and safe, even though they're by far more energy efficient. Again, that near infrared is absolutely essential.
Okay, you've totally been blowing my mind here. So let's continue. What are some of the most important health benefits that people experience from using your nutritional light technology? And how
Well,
quickly can they typically expect to see results? Sorry, I didn't mean
sure.
to interrupt.
No problem. First and foremost, as I guess most people may remember from science classes, possibly, light is a form of visible radiation. And in addition to being radiation, it is energy in the simplest sense. What one might expect initially, first and foremost, is that the light shining primarily into the retina of your eye, the light shining into your eye goes directly to your brain. And not only does it go directly to your brain, but basically the light entering your eye through the retina is
Mhm.
electrical voltage that converts when it hits the eye or the retina technically what we call photoelectricity. current. And your brain and your nervous system, most people recognize, is electrical in nature. Well, in a simple sense, the voltage of your brain to a degree and your nervous system, believe it or not, sunlight energy entering the body 98% through the eye and 2% through the skin. So that is the first thing that we can tell people is you get energy. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I would
Okay.
say probably most everybody, if they're sensitive, in the very first time of using it, has the potential to feel a bit energized. Into that, we've already touched on briefly seasonal affective disorder. Light in regulating the brain's chemistry, it's also regulating our circadian rhythms, which regulate basically everything that's going on.
Mm.
Therefore, the proper light has the potential to elevate your mood. It's like you can almost think of somebody in a dark dungeon would obviously be quite depressed, not just being there, but in the darkness of it all. So getting good quality of light has the benefit of literally elevating one's mood. So we have a potential to raise the mood and reduce fatigue and get energized. What's very unique about our light, in addition to those basic cornerstones, excuse me, of energy and mood, light also regulates your appetite. Morning light, believe it or not, just morning light. And we encourage everybody to step out of the morning sun if you can. It's free, but 15 or 20 minutes of morning sunlight will absolutely affect your waistline. You will absolutely lose weight. No change or anything other than sunlight in the morning. And again, the researchers at our website, it's fascinating, but the light to reduce weight. Kind of staggering, but true. The uniqueness of our light, in addition to being safe, as I've mentioned, versus others that are technically unsafe by our standard, something that's extremely unique. We call it nutritional light because light itself technically is a nutrient. And just like you have a variety of vitamins you may take for different purposes of wellness, the different colors or the different wavelengths, basically colors, both visible and invisible, are in fact nutrients. No ifs, ands, or buts. And a true full spectrum light would be almost like multivitamin, where something like we mentioned, the near infrared, would have specific wavelength response because you're being a specific color. But not only is it a nutrient, but everything that you ingest, every food that you eat, beverages that you drink, whether you take medications, whatever you ingest is absolutely dependent, again, on the light that's coming into your brain through the retina of your eye, because light regulates your metabolism 100%. That is to say, not 99, your metabolism, the fire in your body, metabolism, is basically dependent 100%. Metabolism is dependent on the light that enters your brain through the retina of your eye. Staggering. So our light benefits you as a nutrient, and our light benefits the absorption of all the nutrients you're taking in. And if you don't have the right light coming in, especially if you take expensive vitamins, you know that where those vitamins may go, they may go, pardon my expression, down the toilet bowl. Forgive me, but that's you will not metabolize fully, and therefore, if one is taking vitamins, it would behoove somebody to step out in the morning sunlight, as I say. It's free, and it's really quite miraculous.
That's incredible. Okay. You've already talked about how your photo nutrition is set apart from other full spectrum lights. So are there any, you've also mentioned that there really isn't any potential risk or side effects from your lighting, correct?
Well, technically one could say, and this is not a negative per se, but a potential side effect for some people, especially more sensitive, lighter colored eyes in particular, light colored skin, the potential to have it affect you like too much coffee. That is to say, I don't want to say you would get wired on light, but because it's energy, Mary Elaine, the obvious, too much of it, it's almost like being too much sunshine, you get a burn. But the point is, it's pretty simple to manage. I would go so far as to say that most people, I would think, would feel or sense that they're getting a little too much. All one would do is, if you're using it for therapy, we have two different systems. One is for therapy, first thing in the morning, usually, and one is for maintenance all day long when you're indoors. All that one would do is either use the light a little less time-wise for therapy, or physically move it further back from distance, because the radiation, or radiation in general, light in particular, the radiation effect falls off with distance. So the further you are away from a light source, the less energizing, and vice versa, the closer, obviously. So the side effect, although it's not harmful to the degree of concern, it certainly can be more than one want if you're over, amped up like a cup of coffee, or do I dare say too many cups of coffee?
I probably need that because I really amp up on it. That's not a really good thing. So explain, Ken, with all of this amazing nutritional light technology that you and your brother developed, how can people incorporate the nutritional light technology into their daily routine?
Sure. As mentioned initially, we are a nonprofit, and as much as we like to support ourselves, and we do with the sales of our products, we do not take a pay or income. It goes back into research and raising awareness primarily. However, first and foremost, we encourage those where it's available to try to get morning sunlight, preferably stepping outdoors around breakfast time if that's convenient. And there's sunlight, even on a gray day, there's more sunlight than you may realize hidden behind those clouds. If you can't get outdoors and you still have a sunny day, open the shades wide, let the sun in, even though it will filter some of the wavelengths. The point is, it's the next best thing is to just let the light in. As a matter of fact, when given a choice, when one wakes up, if they can open the shade and let the light in, whether the sun is pouring in or whether it's just changing and getting brighter, that's the easiest thing to do. And as I've mentioned, it's free. If you can't get the sun or it's inconvenient, needless to say, we would be very happy to sell you a light. If you go to our website, solshine.org, that's SOLSHINE.org, solshine.org. You would see our products there. We also have an additional website called scienceoflight.org that has more educational, although they both hopefully give a fair amount of education, who we are, what we do, why we do it. The fact remains that you would use our light, as I mentioned, there's two different applications, if you would. We have a little light panel that folks may associate it sort of like a SAD light, where we recommend for most people therapeutically to get what we call light hygiene. We encourage people to use the light usually around breakfast time is a convenient time to place this light. You can't see it, but I've got one showering me as I speak to you. The fact is, having that light, it has two modes. You would have it on what we call the full spectrum for 15 minutes, followed by the second mode, which is just near infrared light. But that light panel would be what we refer to as for therapy. At the same time, for those folks that are indoors, excuse me, that spend a lot of time indoors, especially many times caregiving situations, the fact is that we have a light bulb that you can buy, either the bulb with a little clip on that you can aim it where you want, or you can buy our light bulb in a floor light. And we recommend that for all day use. And the rule of thumb is when the sun comes up in the morning, lights on. When the sun goes down, reduce your light, because light at night after the sun goes down can impact your sleep adversely. So you want to keep the lights at night on the dimmer side. For those folks that really want to get into it, it would be by far better at night to be under red light, the color red, simple red lights, inexpensive light that you can buy probably in a hardware or a big box store. And the reason for that is that white light or blue at night affects the melatonin, reduces the flow of melatonin, and has the potential to cause sleep. Where ironically, because we've evolved probably under the, not just the sun, but under the cave, with a fire burning, the red light does not adversely affect melatonin. So you can actually be in a red lit environment in the evening, a little bit to get used to, but it will not impact your sleep. As a matter of fact, it will actually help prepare you for sleep. It will bring on the melatonin. So that would be the ideal one for basically maintenance, and one for therapy. A combination of the both would be the ideal, as far as anybody who really wants to get into it. And although I didn't mention it other than being a caregiver early on, as mentioned, of how I sort of get into this, with regard to your audience, I'm sure that many of those folks that are tuning in will be caregivers or giving, the cared as well as the caregiving. The light would benefit both, not just the caregiver to reduce burnout. And we have research specific to burnout and the value of light therapy. Again, really quite remarkable to reduce stress, energize, reduce burnout, help your visual acuity, but it would also be a potential product for the cared one as well, especially if they have fatigue, ability, or if their moods are low. The benefit, again, I cannot tell you enough of how good it is. And I don't mean it like a salesman. I mean it with passion of the benefit of light. And I'll give you a comment in closing that light therapy, when prescribed by a physician for depression, is very often covered by medical insurance. So the efficacy is that great that many,
Okay.
many medical insurance companies will actually cover the cost, or at least based on your policy. That I'll have to leave that company by company. But the fact that it can actually be prescribed for depression in particular and potentially paid for insurance, I find that just, again, that just validates its credibility.
Oh, most definitely. Wow, this has been quite the learning experience for me, and I'm sure all of my listeners. Is there a particular, can you give our audience 3 takeaways from what we discussed today?
Yep, I'd love to. Thank you. I would say first and foremost, a friend of ours, or I'd say a friend, somebody who I love to read, Albert Einstein, said that there is no material world. It's really light consolidated down so that you can see it. So he went on to say that we don't just see light, we are light. And therefore, the first and foremost, if we're really light, one can almost imagine the impact of light on us, as well as being a nutrient. So first and foremost, get that morning sun if you possibly can. It's free, and the benefit is beyond anything I could share at the moment, besides a lot of information at our website. The second thing, if you want to elevate your mood, by all means, again, whether it be morning sunlight in particular or one of our light systems, without question, to get the maximum from the foods that you ingest, to get the maximum of absorption and to maintain your weight, again, morning light would be the ideal. So first and foremost, for energy and reduced fatigue, we certainly encourage light all day long when indoors and first thing in the morning for therapy.
Wow, thank you so much. Can you let the listeners know how we can get in touch with you again?
Yes, I would be very happy if you go to soulshine.org or Science of Light. If they send a message there where you can contact us, those messages go directly to me. It's just myself and my brother. We're a very small, kind of a fledgling little nonprofit, but we love to chat with people. I'd be very happy. Our phone numbers are listed. Please feel free to call. You don't have to buy from us. We'll tell you whatever we know. We'll share as much information as we can. It's our goal to raise awareness one person at a time. And I could simply say, after 35 years, I hope you got the idea. My passion hasn't diminished a breath. So please feel free, email us, find our telephone, give us a call. We're available to do all that we possibly can to share what we sell, share what we know, and again, hopefully, pardon the pun, to lighten this dark world of ours a little bit by getting some good natural sunshine.
Ken, you said it so well. Thank you so much for shedding that light on light. Thank you. That was wonderful. I'm now doing the puns here. So thank you so much for being on. And if people want additional information from Ken, please get in touch with him. He and his brother can answer any question about light that you may have. So please get in touch.
We also mentioned, Mary Lynn, if you don't mind, my final pitch for your audience. Anybody that decides to buy something, if they use the checkout code at the, what do you call it? The checkout. If they simply use the code caregiver, caregiver, we'll be very happy to note that they're coming by way of you and give them a 10% discount of any purchase. So we thank you so much for the time to share our message, and look forward to answering any question from this point forward with any of your constituents.
Well, thank you so much. Okay, folks, use the word caregiver.
Correct?
Right, at checkout, and you'll save 10% on any product that you
Correct.
receive from Ken. So Ken, again, thank you so much for being on and sharing that great offer with my audience. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Mary. We love to raise awareness. Thanks again.
Thank you for listening to the Caregiver Cast today. Get a community of support, resources, and strategies for your caregiving journey inside the Caregiver Lifeline community. Visit caregiverlifelinecommunity.com. Get involved with the show. Send your email to mpetrucci2002@gmail.com. And we'll see you again next week for another episode of Caregiver Cast.